So in this demonstration, I'm going to talk about how we can use the curve tool to actually propagate black and white point information into grade nodes for specific situations. In this situation, I want to show you an example of where a common problem where if you're doing color correction, obviously to your CG, post any AOV work, and you decide to go back into your AOVs and do some color correction work, that information will propagate and pollute all the work and sampling that you did on the black point and the white point down here. So what basically is happening is the black point and the white point is changing from you fiddling with the actual AOV passes that make up your beauty pass, and because of that, that data propagates and screws up any color correction work you did down here. So what we need to do is make sure that any color correct work that we do here, basically your black point and white point will get updated as we make the changes down here. So you don't have to go back and forth and teeter-totter. So I'm going to show you one way of doing this, and in the next lesson I'm going to show you how to deal with interactive lighting. So for instance, if a CG object, in this case a cube, were like moving through a actual nightclub, and the nightclub had flashing lights that were changing both in chrominance and in luminance, brightness and also in color. And in that process, it would actually, that lighting would have to actually change within this object here. In this case, I have a moving cube, and this is just a quick scene. And if you haven't figured it out already, the scanline render node is basically a little V-Ray or Mental Ray or Arnold render engine inside of. This is basically a little Maya scene, relatively speaking, inside of Nuke. So I just have a camera, I have a material with a, assigned to a cube. The cube is moving through the shot. I have a lockdown camera here. It's being rendered through the scanline render. And here is what I would like to call the representation of any ever-changing color correction, example of color correction that you would do on the separate AOVs. So AOVs, usually you break those down and then you rebuild them. So you're going to have your spec pass, your direct, indirect, your emissive pass, all of those that you will be able to color correct together. You combine them back with a copy node with the alpha, and then finally down here is where you do what's called overall color correction. So our color matching is going down here to our plate, but our little changes here are here, and sometimes they update, or you go back and you change a hue of something, or you bring down the intensity of, say, the indirect pass. But you want that data to propagate. Otherwise, you're going to be color correcting here, resampling the white point, black point here, color correcting here, then you have to resample the white point, black point here, and you're going back and forth to do this. So I got this inspiration from watching Tony Lyons' video on, he talks about interactive lighting. I thought, well, we could probably do this with a still frame or frame hold. So if you haven't already, I'm going to put the link down at the bottom. Creative Lyons is his YouTube channel. He is what I call the king of compositors. You go to any studio, they all know who he is, Tony Lyons, and he has been the kindest compositor to actually share his knowledge in compositing. And I can tell you, we have a world of a lot of compositors that consider themselves magicians, and I respectively understand why they don't want to give away their secrets or just to figure things out, because it's a competitive industry, right? And and I see that in my students that are working for big shot film directors. Like I have one student who is working for a major film director, one of the top 10 film directors. They have coffee with them in the morning, and I can just tell he's not being a jerk. He's just being cautious and not giving away any of his secrets that he has learned over the years, in fear of the idea of job security. Just like, I just don't want to, I want to just, I want to be a big shot. I want to, not a big shot, but I should say more along the lines of, I have a livelihood to, look out for. I have a family to feed. So I need to just, buckle down and sell myself for the skill sets that I deservedly earn through working through all these productions. And I understand and respect that. But at the same time, when you get people that actually give away their information that they know, like Tony, just high respect for that. Unbelievable. And I do believe this industry grows and progresses and gets better when it comes to the community sharing of knowledge. You can see that with ZBrush and ZBrush Central, how it's the actual community within the art community of Zebra Central that actually grows and makes the art better as a communal reality. So again, the same thing goes with all these people that are, sharing stuff on YouTube and so forth, and we're trying to continue to build upon that. I'm trying to do that too. So anyway, enough with the rambling. Let's go ahead and jump in here and get started. So we're going to go ahead and use the curve tool, which actually samples things, a lot of stuff. But the first thing we want to do is we want to take, in this case, we want to actually just grab a hold of, I'm just going to go ahead and take this here, a grade node, which I'm going to put here. And this is going to be our overall grade, just like we did before. So I'm going to do overall grade match, right? Now, if you take a look at this current shot, I'll just go ahead and play it through. You can see the back plate doesn't change at all, right? The back plate, the actual shot doesn't move. But let's say the CG was moving through an actual back plate that actually was a panning camera, right? We would actually have the absolute black area like change. So what I like to do is do a frame hold for this and find a frame that I could see the absolute blacks, So I'll just throw that in right there. And I could choose any frame, it doesn't matter. In this case, whatever, frame 1. It doesn't matter because all these frames are the same. But again, if the background does change, you want to use a frame hold. Otherwise, you don't have to use a frame hold. So now we're going to use a curve tool here. And I'm sorry, first we're going to use a crop tool. So I'm going to use a crop tool here. And I'm going to crop this to that area in the same way that we were sampling the darks, right? The darks and the lights. I'm going to come in here and just get this little area right here, right? This is the absolute, darks, blacks right there. So you can click here and click reformat. So if I look through it, we've now reformatted this image to be this color information here. Okay, so this is a series of just a couple pixels here, just to be aware of that. So with that, we can now add a curve tool here. So I'll just go ahead and call this, grab the curve tool here, throw that in there, and click on that. And you can see we have what's called the average intensities, right? See this? So the average intensities, we can go ahead and hit go, and it's going to do and execute the frame range, in this case 1 to 30. Again, you can choose 1 to 1 because it's basically going to just, this doesn't change at all. So you can do 1 to 1 or 1 to 30. When you do an interactive lighting, you want to do 1 to 30. But in case we'll just do 1 to 1, hit OK. So if you take a look what it's done, because we have this set to average intensity here, we can go ahead and see under intensities, we have what is the value of the black point figured out. Okay. Now, if we did the frame range from 1 to 30, we'd have an interactive change throughout this, and we'll talk about that in the next lesson. But because of that, I'm just going to pull this down. We technically have our black point. So what I can do is actually put my viewer to 2 here, and I can actually come in here to my overall grade and plug this in. So if I grab these two, make sure these two are in the shot here. If I hold down Control, I can take that curve tool right here and drag that in as my actual lift. So I'm going to pull that into the lift here. So basically where this squiggly line is, you hold down Control and you drag, and you can now input it here. So you see I'm going to put that to the lift. So this information, and again you want to hit the number 4 here so you can see this. This information is being driven into here via a link. So if things change, which if you did interactive lighting, this would update per frame. Okay. So that is basically the plate black point. Now we can do the plate white point. So all I have to do in this case, again, is I'll just take another frame hold here from this plate shot here. I'm going to hold down Control and make a little pull out here so we can get this to avoid clutter like crazy. So I'm going to do a frame hold here. Obviously it's the same frame hold. I'll add a crop node like that, and I'll put it here. And again, I'm just going to choose, in this case, the white point, the whitest point here. And usually it'd be best to sample this on something that we know is a 50%, or I'm sorry, not 50% gray, but something grayscale. if it's in our scene or something, so whatever. So I'm just go ahead and just get those few pixels, and then again, set this crop node to reformat, and then we can do another curve tool here, and we'll pull it there. There we go. And let's go ahead and take a look at that. So that curve tool, we can go ahead and sample this here. And let's do that. So we'll take that and sample it. Obviously it's kind of, you just want to take this here. And I don't know why it's not, oh, never mind. Just leave it. I'm actually looking at the crop node there. Okay, so there's the curve tool. So now I can go ahead and do the average intensities, and again, I only need to go one frame here. So if you go take a look at the average intensities here, you could see the values are 0.418, 1, and 1. Okay, so that is our waypoint or our gain. So I'll come over here and take this. Now you might be going, well, why don't you just, sample whatever, just crop from this? Do you really need all this frame hold or whatever? No. So I'm going to go to the overall grade here and double click here and click here, so I get these two that are up. See here. So again, my property's been set to 2. And I will take the squiggly line here and hold down Control and drag that to my gain. And so let's go ahead and plug that in. So now you can see it's a kind of a light blue there. So you can see those are set. Now the black point and the white point are the same exact thing. In this circumstance, this is where we are going to pull this in right here. This is where we're going to have the issue of needing to update things. Things need to update over and over again. So what I'm going to do again is take a look at here. I'll do a frame hold here. Oops. Frame hold. And this frame hold is going to be basically, I could do it at the pre-mult stage, or I could do color grade, whatever, but I'll just do the pre-mult stage here. And I'll put that to frame 1. So let's go ahead and take a look at it. So there's our CG, which you can see. And I am going to come in here. Actually, you know what? I'll just put a dot node here and connect it right there. Okay, so there is my CG. And this time we'll do the black point. So it's obvious this is the darkest area in the scene, so we got to set our blacks and our white points. So in this case, I'll use another crop node. And I know that this is the darkest area, right? So I will take this crop node and crop it to that little section right there. And pull it in here. After this lesson, you'll probably be like, well, I got a faster way of doing it, Matt, using some of your ideas. That's totally cool. I got no problem with that. So I'm going to hit reformat, and now we have what is considered the black point, as you can see. So this is going to update every time we can click on average, the average button. So again, we're going to hit the curve tool. This is not updating live. We're going to have to go and actually click the button to analyze each time we make adjustments. So I'm going to take this, take the curve tool now, and the same thing, average intensities, go, hit it, and now you can see the value here is 0.01, 0.01, 0.01. This is a grayscale image. I didn't put any tint of color in it, by the way. So you can see that is technically our black point. So now I can take this here, and I will just make this look nice and pretty here. All right, so we'll take this here, double click here, and I will plug this in. So this data is the black point. So you can see if I hit the little 4 here on this, I'll keep clicking these 4s, you can see the data information coming in. So there's our black point, and you guessed it, we're going to do the same thing again. So I can just take this here and plug it down and bring it down here or whatever. And this time I'll disable the gray node here. I know the whitest white on here is going to be this guy right here, right? Go ahead and turn that crop node, and then of course we would do a curve tool. Again, I could just duplicate that curve tool and resample if I want, but I'm being lazy. And then I'm just going to hit go, and again, just 1 to 1, hit OK. So if you go to the data here, you could see the intensity data. This is now what's considered our whites, which is pretty low. You can see it's like 0.4. So with that said, I can take that now, double click here, and grab this, hold down Control, and plug this into the whites. So I'll plug that into whites. Again, I'll hit the number 4 here so you can see all the data. So again, if you want to label these, you can. You can actually make a backdrop for this, and we can call this the, hold down Control just to drag this and make it look pretty. And I'll just take the color here and take the saturation down for the actual visual. So I'll call this black white point of, what is this, the backplate. Alright, so I can take this and bring down the size of this there. There we go. And then this is going to be another backdrop from which I can come over here and just make it look pretty. And we'll call this, we'll label this the black white point of CG. I'll bring down the size of the font here so it just fits in nicely. So these are all set up for any sort of interactive lighting that happens in here, minus the frame holds, if we do eventually do the frame holds. But in this case, we're using frame holds because it doesn't change. Again, if you take a look at the shot itself, it's not going to change. So let's go ahead and see what how the color correct is working in here. Don't forget that we actually need to add a unpremult here and a premult so that we don't get any weird results in the final. And voila, we have CG that's matching to our, let's see if I disable this and re-enable it. We now have CG that's matching to the background here. And again, like we talked about before, you can play with the gamma if you feel that it's too dark or bright. You can play with multiply offset if you want to kind of just tweak that. But here comes the fun part. Let's say I come back to my grade node here, and we'll pretend this is like an AOVs, like I'm color correcting the direct and the indirect, which are combined. I just want to maybe lift the shadow, so let me go ahead and just put my viewer to it. What if I take this now, right, and I decide, well, you know what, I'm going to come over here to the gain. Let's go to the gain process here, and let me color correct this. So here's the gain. And I'm going to, actually, you know what, let's see. Let's go to the gain here. And I'll add a little bit of like a green color. And I'll take my lift and bring it down a little bit. So I'm going to bring this to a value. I'm going to bring this value up or down to a 1. Actually, let's go to 0.002. Right, and I'll copy that for the lift. So I have just made some changes in my original footage, and now if I pull it through, the blacks and the whites no longer match. So how do I get this to match if I've done some work over here? Well, you would have to go back and resample the lift and the gain again. I'm sorry, the black point and the white point again of the original CG. But in this case, all we need to do is go down this pipe, click these, I'll click these two so they're both there. Go to the curve tools on both of those and just click go, boom, and now it has updated. So I made some changes here to what would be hypothetically our AOV passes, but every time I do that, I need to propagate that data into the blacks and the white values here and here. Okay. So this is really cool. So again, I can come back to, say, my indirect pass or something. Let's just pretend this is kind of meddling in my color correction area. And I can just, if I take this and give this a, you could see I'm coming here, I'll give this like a color that's more reddish here. But then again, I take my lift up to something like 0.3, 0.3, and 0.3. And let's add a little bit of green in the shadows here. This is pretty extreme, by the way. In fact, I'm going to put this to 1 and 1 and 1 here. So now I've got this green in here. Color correct is pretty bad. I'll go back to my merge node. You can see the blacks and the whites are not matching at all. So once again, all I got to do is come to my average here, click these two averages here, and just go Go. Okay. Go. Okay. And we are back in business. We still have a slightly green tint in our shadows, but to a certain degree it's being averaged together. The black points and white points are good. So in this case, you can come in here and add a color correct node as I described early. You can add a saturation node here. You can do the high pulse. I'm going to show you in the next lesson how you can separate the high pulse, which is basically setting the black point and the white point separately when we get into the interactive lighting area. So again, this was again inspired by Mr. Tony Lyons. So go and subscribe to his website. He is probably the #1 head honcho and the most knowledgeable of compositing, in my opinion, on any online resources and so forth. He's got a great way of teaching. So definitely go subscribe, take a look at his stuff. And as you can see, this is just the result of artists sharing their knowledge with other artists and so forth, and just figuring things out. In the next lesson, we're going to talk about interactive lighting again, which is something that is demonstrated, and I'll send a link for that to Tony Lyons' website where he kind of describes it. And I'm kind of taking it a little bit further, I think. Hopefully I'm going the right direction. And I know Tony is subscribed, so if I'm doing it wrong, let me know, Tony. That's part of, I guess, if you can help me out. So with that said, anyway, I hope you enjoyed this. Again, look for the next lesson, which we're going to talk about interactive lighting.